The bull did not move like a prize animal. He moved like weather. Slow, heavy, certain. In the middle of the county show ring, while every rich rancher in Flint Ridge leaned over the rail, the red brindle bull lowered his head and breathed once into the dust. Across from him stood Iron Gate Ranch's champion Shorthorn. Polished horns, brushed hide, imported blood. A silver tag on the halter that told everyone what money could buy. But the Shorthorn's ribs trembled in the heat. The red brindle bull did not tremble. He stood wide on 4 pale feet, deep through the chest, calm through the eye, as if the whole argument had already been settled somewhere out on the grass.
At the far rail, Maren Cole kept both hands folded around the top board. She wore a faded black work dress, sun-bleached at the shoulders, with prairie dust pressed into the hem. Her face gave nothing away. Not to the crowd, not to the judges, not to Everett Pike. Pike owned Iron Gate, 9,000 acres of fenced valley land, 2 wells with wind pumps, and enough influence to turn a handshake into county policy. He was smiling at the judges. It was the smile of a man who had already spent the prize money in his head. Then the head judge stepped toward the center of the ring. "I have judged cattle from Abilene to Dodge," he said, lifting his voice over the hush. "I have seen heavier animals. I have seen cleaner pedigrees. I have seen stock with papers thick enough to stop a bullet." A dry laugh moved through the crowd. The judge did not laugh with them. "But this bull," he said, and put a hand on the red brindle's shoulder, "carries weight where weight matters. Bone, lung, foot, temper, hardiness." Everett Pike's smile thinned. "This year's grand champion," the judge said, "is entry 12, Ledger, owned by Mrs. Maren Cole." For one bright second, Flint Ridge County forgot how to breathe, because 2 summers earlier, the same county had watched Maren Cole spend $19 on a calf they said was not worth a rope, and they had laughed all the way home. The calf came through the auction gate near dusk, after the good animals had sold and the buyers had grown careless. She was narrow and mud-caked, with 1 torn ear, a cough in her chest, and knees too large for the rest of her body. The auctioneer looked at her, looked at the tired crowd, and did not bother pretending. "Scrub heifer," he called. "No papers. Damn dead on the trail. Who'll give me hide price?" A ranch hand said, "Give me a shovel and I'll save everybody trouble." Men laughed. Maren sat near the back, holding a handkerchief in both hands. Inside it was the last cash she had not already promised to the feed man, the miller, or the undertaker. $19.60. That was what remained after the fever took her husband, after the bank took the team, after neighbors with kind voices told her a woman alone should not try to keep a place that a man had already failed to make pay. The auctioneer tried again. Any bid at all. Maren looked at the heifer, not at the mud, not at the torn ear, not at the shaking knees. She looked at the back, straight beneath the dirt. She looked at the hock, set square. She looked at the way the little animal, sick as she was, kept turning toward the gate instead of away from it. A creature that weak should have given up. This one was still looking for a way out. Maren stood. $19. The auctioneer squinted like he had misheard. "Ma'am." $19, she said again. The laughter came fast this time. Not cruel enough to be called an attack. Just easy. Comfortable. The laughter people use when the world has arranged itself exactly as they expect. Everett Pike walked past with 2 hired men, and a new shorthorn bull calf he had bought for $340. He glanced at Maren's purchase for half a second. "Mrs. Cole," he said, "grief makes bad accountants of us all." Then he walked on. The gavel fell. Sold. Maren gave over the bills. The clerk counted them twice, as if the money itself was embarrassed to be there. She kept 60 cents in her palm, tied the heifer's rope around her wrist, and started the 3-mile walk back to her claim. The calf stumbled every few yards. Every wagon that passed slowed down. Nobody had to say a word. Their faces did the work. Maren did not answer them. She was already calculating. Half a sack of bran if the storekeeper extended credit. Skim milk if she could trade mending for it. A dry stall if she cleaned the north corner of the barn. Water from the shallow draw if the pump held. $19 had bought the calf. Keeping her alive would cost more than money. At the gate to her place, an old man stood with a milk pail in one hand. His name was Henrik Vale. He farmed 40 acres of ground so poor even weeds seemed to consider leaving it. Yet his kitchen garden stayed green, and his 2 dairy cows were round as barrels. He looked at the heifer. He looked at Maren. They gave you laughter with the animal, he said. They gave it free, Maren answered. Henrik set the milk pail on the ground. Auction men know prices, he said. Grass knows value. That was all. No sermon. No pity. No warning. Just a pail of milk and a sentence that stayed with her longer than sleep did. Maren named the calf Juniper, because juniper was the only green thing that held its color through winter on the ridge. And for the next 6 weeks, Juniper lived by inches. Maren rose in the dark. She warmed milk over the stove. She rubbed the calf's legs when cold settled in them. She cleaned the cough from Juniper's nose. She walked the draw with a knife, cutting willow tips and salt grass, because that was what her land had. The good valley pasture belonged to men like Pike. Maren had the hard strip, a rough creek bottom, alkali grass, cane, willow, thistle that fought back, land that looked almost empty until you were desperate enough to study it. And Juniper studied it. At first she only nibbled. Then she chose. Willow leaf, cane shoot, sedge root, the coarse green weeds other cattle stepped around. By July, the joke had changed shape. Juniper's torn ear healed into a notch. Her cough disappeared. Her hide darkened into red-brown brindle, dull in shadow and fiery under noon sun. She was not pretty in the usual way. She was useful looking, deepening, widening, settling into herself. Maren saw it before anyone else did. Henrik saw it next. A girl named Tessa Bell saw it after that. Tessa was 13, small for her age, quick with her hands, and used to being shooed away from places where grown people thought she did not belong. She began appearing near the cottonwoods after school, watching Maren lead Juniper through the creek bottom. Maren did not call to her. Wild creatures come closer when they are not chased. One afternoon, Juniper walked straight to the trees and pushed her damp nose into Tessa's sleeve. The girl froze. Maren kept cutting thistle. Her name is Juniper. I know, Tessa said, barely above a whisper. Folks in town talk. What do they say? That you bought a grave with legs. Maren looked up. Tessa's eyes were on the heifer. But she don't look dead. From then on, Tessa came most evenings. She carried water, scrubbed pails, learned how to stand near cattle without making her nervousness contagious. And she talked to Juniper as if the heifer had been waiting for a proper conversation all her life. When Juniper was bred that winter, Maren did not use Pike's bloodline. She could not afford it. More importantly, she no longer trusted animals that had been bred to impress judges more than weather. Henrik took her to a small place beyond Miller's Crossing, where a quiet Czech farmer kept a dun-colored bull nobody praised and everybody borrowed. The bull was plain, heavy-footed, unfashionable. But every calf in his pasture stood square, filled out early, and followed its mother with calm eyes. The fee was $12 and a wagon load of split wood. Maren paid with 2 months of labor and 3 hens. All winter, Juniper grew heavier. All winter, Maren counted. Hay, bran, credit, firewood, days until spring grass. Some nights the arithmetic turned so sharp she had to get out of bed and walk to the barn just to put a hand on Juniper's warm side. Tessa had no such caution. She pressed her cheek against the heifer's flank and whispered to the calf inside. "You better be strong," she said. "We've already named you Ledger." Maren nearly laughed. "Ledger. So he can keep account, Tessa said, very serious. Of who was wrong? The calf came in an April rain. Maren found him folded beside his mother in clean straw, red brindle like juniper, with 4 pale feet and a white mark under his chin. He stood in less than an hour. Not gracefully, not smoothly, but with a stubborn, wide-legged insistence that made Hendrik take off his hat when he saw him. That, the old man said, is not accident. Ledger grew like a rumor with proof behind it. At 1 month, he looked 3 months old. At 3 months, he had the chest of a winter calf. At 6 months, the men who rode past Maren's fence stopped pretending not to look. Everett Pike stopped once in late September. He sat his horse by the road, one gloved hand on the saddle horn. Ledger was shoulder-deep in the creek bottom, calmly stripping willow leaves while Pike's imported stock on the neighboring range bawled at empty troughs and waited for hay. Pike's eyes narrowed. "Odd animal," he called. "Good animal," Maren answered. "Odd is not the same as good." "No," she said. "But neither is expensive." His jaw shifted. Then he laughed, because men like Pike often laugh first when something makes them uneasy. "Sell him," Pike said. "I'll give you $75. More than fair for unpapered stock." Maren kept her hand on the fence wire. "He is not for sale." That was the first time Everett Pike looked at her as if she might be a problem. The second time came during the dry summer. It started with 3 weeks of sky so bright it seemed polished. Then 6. Then 9. The creek shrank into separate brown pools. The well rope came up warm. Grass curled into wire. Dust slipped through window cracks and settled on plates, pillows, Bible pages, and bread. Men who had measured themselves in acres and bloodlines began measuring themselves in hay bales. Iron Gate hauled feed from 2 counties away. Pike's Shorthorns, bred wide and soft for better years, stood in the heat with foam at their mouths and fear in their eyes. They were not stupid animals. They were simply specialized for a world that had disappeared. Maren's place suffered too. Her beans died. Her chickens quit laying. Her hands cracked at the knuckles from carrying water. But Juniper and Ledger did something the valley could not ignore. They adapted. They grazed at dawn, browsed at noon, moved into the draw when the sun rose high, and ate the rough green things that other cattle refused, even while losing flesh. Willow, cane, salt grass, wild sunflower leaves. A bitter weed Hendrik called ironwort. By August Ledger had lost almost no condition. Juniper still carried weight. Their hides did not shine from abundance. They held from suitability. And that was harder for proud men to accept than luck. Luck can be dismissed. Suitability makes an accusation. One by one, ranchers stopped at Maren's fence. At first they came with suspicion. "Is there a spring down there?" "No." "You buying feed from the railroad?" "No." "You dosing them with something?" "Water when I have it." "What grows where they stand?" Then they watched Ledger tear a strip of willow leaf with calm concentration and chew like the whole county's answer was in his mouth. "What kind of blood is that?" one man asked. Maren looked over the creek bottom. The kind nobody wanted. The drought did not humble everyone the same way. Some men grew quieter. Some grew kinder. Everett Pike grew dangerous. He had built Iron Gate on certainty. Certain land, certain papers, certain judges, certain obedience from men who needed his favors. Maren's 2 animals were not just thriving. They were disproving him in public. That autumn, she received a notice from the Flint Ridge Stock Association. Ledger's entry for the county fair was under review. Because Juniper had no certified dam record, the letter said, her bull calf might be barred from breeding class judging. The paper was clean. The language was polite. The knife was obvious. Pike chaired the association. Maren read the notice twice at her kitchen table. Tessa stood beside her with both fists clenched. "They know whose calf he is," the girl said. Maren folded the paper. Knowing and allowing are not twins. Hendrik came by near dusk. He read the notice, then looked toward the barn, where Ledger stood broad and quiet in the half-light. "Paper is useful," Henrik said, "until paper argues with a living thing. What do? You take the living thing to town." 3 days before the fair, Pike came himself, not on horseback, in a buggy, with a lawyer beside him and dust on the wheels. That told Maren he had stopped pretending this was neighbor business. Pike removed his hat as if courtesy cost him nothing. "Mrs. Cole," he said, "you have a useful animal. I will admit that." Maren waited. "The drought changed the market. Hardy calves will bring a premium next spring. The valley needs organization, capital, proper management. Yours," she said. His smile did not reach his eyes. "I am prepared to buy Juniper and Ledger outright. $1,400. The number struck the yard like thunder. $1,400, enough to clear the mortgage, repair the roof, buy a team, fill the barn, sleep through winter without counting every sack of meal. The lawyer opened the document case. "If you decline," he said, "Mr. Pike will contest the animal's eligibility." Provenance disputes can become expensive. There it was, a velvet offer wrapped around a hammer. Maren looked past them to Ledger, who had lowered his head to drink from a trough Tessa had filled bucket by bucket. $1,400 would buy relief, but it would also sell the only thing that had ever made the land answer back. Pike misread her silence. "You are a practical woman," he said. "A person alone cannot build a breed." Maren turned then. "I was alone when I bought his mother." The yard went still. "I was alone when men laughed. Alone when she coughed through winter. Alone when the feed bill came due." She glanced toward the barn, where Tessa stood in the shade and Henrik leaned on his cane. "Then I learned the difference between being alone and being counted out." Pike's face hardened. "The offer expires when I leave. Then it is already gone." The lawyer snapped his case shut. Pike put his hat back on. "You will regret making an enemy of me." Maren shook her head. "No, Mr. Pike. I regret nearly believing men like you were the weather." The fair opened under a white-hot sky. By mid-morning, the cattle barns were thick with flies, sweat, and rumor. People came from the far edges of the county, not to see pies, quilts, or schoolchildren's handwriting prizes. They came to see whether a widow's unpapered bull could stand in the same ring as Iron Gate's money. Ledger entered with a rope halter and no flourish. Tessa had brushed his coat until the brindle caught fire in the light. Maren walked at his shoulder, calm enough to make the crowd lean closer. Pike's Shorthorn was beautiful. No one could deny it. Clean-lined, tall, balanced like a drawing in a breed book. But he was nervous in the heat, jerking his head against the lead, foam gathering near the bit. Ledger stood as if he had brought a piece of the creek bottom with him. The judges circled. They checked mouths, feet, backs, depth, temper. Then the head judge asked what the bull had been fed through the drought. The ring went quiet. Maren said, "What the draw could spare. Willow, cane, saltgrass, and morning pasture." The judge looked at her. "On how much purchased feed?" "Less than 200 pounds since June." A stir moved through the rail. 200 pounds was what some ranchers fed in a bad week. The judge looked back at Ledger. There are moments when truth stops needing defense. It simply stands there, breathing. When Ledger was named Grand Champion, Pike did not protest in the ring. He could not. Too many people had eyes. Too many men had hungry cattle at home. The ribbon mattered. The silver cup mattered less. The real judging happened after, behind the cattle barns, where the shade smelled of hay dust and sweat. Abern Ross came first. He had laughed at Maren the day she bought Juniper. He held his hat in both hands now, turning the brim until it nearly folded. "Mrs. Cole," he said, "I was wrong." Maren said nothing. "My cows are thin. My calves will be worse. If there is a breeding fee for Ledger, I would like to know it. Another rancher stepped up.
Then another. Within minutes, the men who once watched her walk home with a dying heifer stood around her like debtors. They expected a price that would punish them. They would have paid it. Pike would have named a number high enough to make shame profitable. Maren looked at their faces. Pride had left them. Fear had not. And fear, she knew, can make a person mean or honest, depending on what answer they are offered. The fee is $19, she said. Abern blinked. 19. That is what I paid for his mother. Nobody spoke. Maren continued, if you do not have cash, bring hay at fair measure, or fence work, or a week of hauling water for a family who needs it more than I do. Tessa stared at her as if she had given away a kingdom, but Henrik smiled. He understood first. Maren was not making Ledger cheap. She was making the valley indebted to something better than Pike. The blood should stay where the drought taught it, she said. We all live under the same sky. That winter, Ledger bred 31 cows. In spring, the valley watched the ground for answers. The calves came sturdy, not identical, not magic. Real animals, with all the ordinary trouble of hooves, weather, milk, and luck. But more of them stood early. More kept weight. More carried Juniper's quiet eye and Ledger's wide chest. And when the next dry spell came, those calves moved toward brush before hunger taught them panic. By the third year, people had stopped calling them scrub cattle. They called them ridge reds. By the fifth, Iron Gate was half its size. Everett Pike sold land in parcels, then wells, then breeding stock no one wanted at the old price. His papers remained impressive long after his animals stopped being useful. Maren bought the West Quarter when it came open. Not with a miracle fortune, with breeding fees. Hay traded fairly, calves sold honestly, and the slow compounding interest of an animal that could live on the land it was born to use. Tessa became her herd manager before she turned 20. Henrik, walking slower each year, still came to the fence every Sunday evening and watched Juniper's descendants spread across the draw like coals in tall grass. One evening, after the first frost silvered the sedge, Maren stood beside him on the porch. Juniper was old then, gray around the muzzle, one ear notched, still square enough to make a young cow look foolish. Ledger stood beyond her, massive and calm, with 3 seasons of calves feeding across the low ground. Henrik tapped his pipe against the porch rail. The auction wrote $19, he said. Maren looked over the pasture. The bank wrote risk. The association wrote uncertified. Townsfolk wrote foolish. Tessa came out carrying the evening ledger book, the real one, full of service dates, calf weights, hay trades, and names that had once been enemies and were now neighbors. Maren took the book, but she did not open it. The numbers mattered. They had saved her. But the deeper account was out in the grass. The auction men had known the price. The papers had known the pedigree. Everett Pike had known the market. But the land had kept the only ledger that mattered.